Happy midday to y'all. Happy midday to y'all. Let's have another tab open here. Let's take care of that. All right. It's been X'd out. Sitting here by myself. Apparently by myself. But that's all right. Actually sitting here doing some pre-work, looking for a quote of the day. So I guess my question to anybody that's actually listening over on Gun Channels is, who would you like to hear a quote from today? If there's somebody that you'd like to get a quote from, I'll let you pick the person, somebody that actually has something quotable. You don't have to have the quote, I'll look it up. But who would you like to hear a quote from? Also checking out some other things like Daily Gun Show email account. See if we have anything new over there since yesterday. We got a couple yesterday. And Angry American sent in something. I think it was a suggestion for maybe a movie or something like that. And John Harvey, who I guess listens via the podcast, sent in an email. So it looks like we have a movie of the day submission that's new. And let's see what the movie he has here. Okay, the movie of the day that I'll just say S. Johnson suggested was Falling Down. Now, I think it was a while back, maybe quite a while back, that we had Falling Down. And it's certainly, to me, a very classic movie, looking from the traditional mindset of America, of that 1950s mindset, regardless of what year it actually is, where you can work for one company, put in all your effort, all your eggs in one basket, but yet is the company going to be there for you? And what this man goes through, played by Michael Douglas, with an appropriate haircut, shirt and tie, and a briefcase, goes through when he finally hits the breaking point and falls down. Thus the name of the movie. And good morning, Hawaii Volcano Squad. I will check the internal, Mr. Ponery. Okay, by the internal, he doesn't mean private message. He must mean something else. So I'll check the other place of messages. Over on Gun Channels, there's more than one way to send somebody a message. There's the messaging system, which you go to the top, like where your little icon is. You click on that, then there's like settings, messages, my profile, that sort of thing, where you can send and receive messages. Then, of course, if you go to like on the lobby page, just as an example, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little box that says chat. If you click on that, and then you click on somebody's name who's currently logged in, you can send them a private message. Or if it doesn't really need to be private, you can go ahead and just type it in the text where everybody who's logged in will be able to see it. That's an interesting. I think that's a question, Angry, that you're putting out there. Meryl Streep has a fan club? ? Yeah, good question. I would imagine there's probably some people that are fans of her movies, which is a good demarcation between the actor and the person. The actor may have some good movies that were, and the actor simply stands on the shoulders of everyone who supports that movie, that role, the writing, the directing, the costumes, special effects, if there are any, that sort of thing. They're simply reading lines of which they may not really necessarily understand, but they don't have to understand them. They just simply have to portray someone else and make it believable, even if they have no idea what they're talking about. Sometimes that comes across in movies, especially in technical things, where people start speaking and they're throwing out certain terms left and right. And it's quite clear that those terms are being slightly misused, that they really don't have any idea what they're talking about, that they are indeed just reading them. I know Hawaii Volcano Squad spoke about this subject in a chat last night, in his chat, about movies, Hollywood specifically is what he was ranting about, but just in general, movies and how, you know, the actor, or I should say the roles that actors play versus the person the actor is, and how they're, more cases than not, very, very different than, like, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the character he plays from the person he is. Now, they may be similar, but they're not the same. Bruce Willis, the character he plays versus the person he is, versus Meryl Streep. I hear somebody tapping away. I have a lurker. Oh, it figures it's the Mossad spying on me. I know too much, apparently. Emmett is wrestling with his microphone. I can't imagine he hit much traffic trying to get into this chat. But today on the Daily Gun Show, we're going to have a Q&A segment. So if you have any questions just in general, or whether it's specifically of those of us, you know, on the Daily Gun channel, I'll throw it out there, or whether it's just a general question, topic to be discussed. Go ahead and throw it out there. I'll try to keep an eye on the text chat out in the lobby. And, you know, just doing this for a few minutes, it does kind of make me wonder how, you know, like Jimmy James, how he can sit there for 6 hours and keep something going and kind of being a one-man band. And of course, now he has, you know, Tony with him, and that's certainly very helpful, and occasionally has others as well. But, you know, at the beginning, it was just him kind of going through on his own, being the one-man band. And, you know, I don't think there's no way I could do that for, you know, 5-6 hours. I can't even do it for 10 minutes.
No, I could rant for 6 hours.
You think you could, huh?
I don't think anyone would want to listen to it.
Okay. So how are you doing today, Emmett?
Not bad. Went to another job interview thing.
Say that again?
Went to another job interview thing.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully this time it will actually result in a job.
Yes, jobs are good.
I just don't want to go to job interviews. So, but we'll see.
Are you settled yet? Or are you still scooting around?
No, I'm scooting.
Okay.
Everything is like folded up in the balcony because it was raining so many days. So I had flies. Some bullshit. Anyway, yeah, I went there. I got the email to send my resume to through a friend of my parents, of my mom. So
now
I already had a contact. It's
Now,
a
was it
hotel.
an employment agency or directly to the employer himself?
No, no, I went to meet the hotel manager. It's a hotel.
Oh, okay.
So we were sitting, I came in, we were sitting, and he was like, "Yeah, you have a daughter, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you're not gonna make enough money to support a family just sitting in the reception, doing shifts at the reception. That's not work. That's not a job for someone with a family. Like, we need to think how we're gonna, arrange a like arrange a position for you where you make enough money and you get a fixed income, monthly income."
Right.
I was like, "All right, that's cool." So he said, "How about you'll be the chief of security for the new hotel that we're opening?" I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." I did a bunch of computer tests, and they're supposed to call me back. I hope it'll turn up, not to be just talking, but also actually giving me the job.
Right. Yeah, I
Because
had
that
a
would be
place.
very nice.
This is back in the '80s, where I had interviewed at this place. They were stockbrokers,
Right.
and when I look back at it, what the guy had told me, as I through the rear mirror of hindsight, was very much true, but I didn't quite realize it at the time, and I was actually a little bit upset. But he said something kind of similar to what you just said. It was that it wasn't about the money; it was about the risk. And he said, he says, and this was at the end of the interview. He said, everything you have certainly looks fine. He says, but I am a little concerned that this position is probably a little bit too risky for somebody that has a family.
Right.
And at the time, I was upset, like, well, that's my decision to make whether it's too risky. If it was too risky, I wouldn't apply, or I'd say no. I mean, let me make the decision on what's too risky. But then looking backwards at it, I kind of appreciate what he said more now than I did at that moment.
Oh no, I totally understand what he said, because it's true. You can't. It's not. I mean, you can support a family working shifts at a reception desk. It just means you're gonna have to work really, really, really hard, like a lot of hours, and you're always gonna be like, you know, almost in a hole. So
Right. It just, at that time, I was out of work, and compared
right.
to making zero, a lower paying job was a hell of a lot more money than zero.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll take any job right now, but again, if they want me to be a security manager, that's better than being a receptionist is basically the lowest, on
Right.
that side of the organization is the lowest position. So if I can be one position up, I don't
Oh, yeah.
mind working security. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if
but
it was a security and work doing shift work, and then maybe 6 months to a year getting promoted to head of security, at least there'd be a path.
yeah, the head of security. It's a small hotel that they're opening. I doubt there'll be more than two or three people working security except for me.
Right.
It's not like you have 20 people working security at a small hotel. You have one security per shift probably, and then you have the chief of security who does whatever.
Right. Now,
Uh,
do you think they're chiefs? Because some places will, when they have like, sometimes places will use the term supervisor very loosely. In other words, yes, you supervise other employees, but you also work a shift yourself. So the supervisor actually might be the first shift employee, and the employees that he supervises might be the second and third shift employees.
that might be. I don't know. We haven't discussed the details or the wage yet. All I did was like, cool, that sounds cool, and he said, okay, so
Right.
you need to pass the whole uh computerized background slash reliability slash aptitude test, which took like 2 hours on a computer, almost fucking killed me. Because, you know, I mean, sitting 2 hours and answering computerized form.
Right. It's very tedious.
And some of it was actually kind of hard. I mean, I don't know if they do it to everybody or there are different levels. I think there are different levels because the the guy who set up the whole thing was one of the security guys, but he had to like call the human resources person and ask him like which level of test I need to take, and that dude was like, you know, give him the whole thing and give him the management thing and the security thing, you know, do all the tests. So I'm like, okay, because I don't think, you know, like their housekeeping people do that test because I mean, I don't see them being able to do it. It's parts of it were just like filling a form, but parts of it were somewhat complicated mathematical questions and like, you know, technical problems and all sorts of stuff, you know, that is frankly, I mean, I had the hard time with some of it and I'm not stupid to say the least. So that's when somebody chimes in and says, "Are you sure you're not stupid?"
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of times what they call aptitude tests are really knowledge tests, not aptitude tests. There's a difference. There's a difference between the ability to learn, which is actually intelligence, and what you know, which is actually knowledge.
It
They're not the
it
same
was a
thing.
combination of both. It was a combination of both, but it was mostly not about if you know things, but if you can solve a problem. Like it's not even complicated problem. It's just that they're timed. So, you know, like they show you a bunch of cubes stacked up in different shapes, and they ask you how many cubes touch a specific, you know, the one that's colored. The rest are white. So you have to start to think what the structure looks like from the inside and how things touch each other and stuff like that. So it was pretty. I mean, it was pretty complicated stuff for something that you have like 30 seconds to answer. Um, and then the integrity test is basically they ask you a bunch of questions in different ways again and again and again about using drugs, using alcohol, gambling, do you have debt, you know, all that shit.
Right.
Uh, and I always have problems with those tests. Like I did these a bunch of times. I did those for security clearances in the military because I have a top secret security clearance. So I did those a bunch of times, and every time you know, usually they interview me after the computer test anyway, because they're like, it's written right here that you support drug legalization, but it's written right here that you never use drugs. How come? And then, you know, because it's Israel, you know, we don't have really libertarians here, so I need to like explain, you know, the difference between things I think people shouldn't do and things I think you should put people in jail for, because those are two separate categories for me.
Right. There are things that I believe in, but I don't necessarily actively um, um, advocate for them.
Right. Oh no, I absolutely advocate for legalization of drugs. I just don't. I wouldn't use drugs if they were legal. I was in plenty of places where they are legal and I never use them, so I'm not gonna. That's not the reason. I'm not. I don't do drugs. I don't do drugs because I don't feel the need to do that.
Right.
But you know, it's when the computer's looking at the form, it's really weird because it's like, do you have friends that do drugs? Like, yeah. Do you support drug legalization? Yeah. Have you ever tried drugs? Nope. You know? So usually they call me in. They're like, "What's this? What's this about?" At least when it's security jobs, they don't like think it's weird that I have a gun and stuff.
Right.
So,
But anything outside security, they're like, what?
um, well, it depends on the place. Once people get to know me, they're not even concerned about it because the thing is, you know, you can say, well, they don't even need to know you have a gun, right? But the problem is, eventually, one day at work, I'm gonna get up on a ladder to pick something up, or somebody's
Right.
gonna see the gun, right? And I don't want to go to that place. I'm like, so I just tell them, look, I'm armed. If it's a problem, because some places are like, well, we don't have a problem with it, but we're a part of a chain or a global company that has a policy against it. You know, like some fast food places and stuff like that, or schools. Some schools just have a school policy. So I rather just tell them, look, I'm armed wherever I go. If this is a problem, then I'm not. I guess I'm not right for you because I'm not going to leave my gun at home every day to go to work, and I can't leave it in the car because it's Israel. And I'm definitely not going to be unarmed half of the day just because somebody has some stupid policy.
Right.
But when it's security, it's. I mean, actually, I've been to another hotel for a receptionist job, and I was like, you know, I'm armed all the time. They were like, yeah, well, as long as the guests don't know it, we don't care.
Yeah. Don't get on a ladder in front of the guest.
No, you know, they were like, well, you're gonna. I was like, well, I can get a holster that tucks under the shirt. They were like, okay, then that's fine. Because you gotta wear you gotta tuck in your shirt when you work in the reception. You can't like wear concealment garments.
Right.
There's a dress code and shit. But I mean, people are getting much more friendly towards. I mean, hell, just 2 days ago we had a terrorist attack and a civilian took out the terrorist. So people are like, maybe it's not such a bad idea that we have an armed worker at the workplace.
Right. And that's a turn in public opinion, which takes a long time to happen.
Oh yeah, it's but it's happening. I mean, people were always not like. I don't think there was ever a point in Israel where everyone was completely against civilians having guns. The thing in Israel is people are like, yes, some civilians should have guns. Like not everyone. Some people are okay, and that's still the opinion of most people. But let's say the definition of who they're okay with carrying a gun, I think, is getting much wider to the point where I believe that at some point it will be just like everybody should be able to carry that. They're not worried about it. Because their opinion is largely influenced by the current situation. Like Israelis are very conservative about these things. What is the current law probably is the right way, So if like right now they changed the law, they changed the regulations, and they let certain people carry a gun. Well, okay, fine. And when they see it works, and there isn't blood and guts in the street, which obviously there isn't. So, and plus, a lot of people want guns now. So
was there one or two trucks that ran off the road and drove civilians?
It was one truck. It was two civilians took shots at him. It was one truck. Yeah, I simplified the story. Yeah, it was two different guys.
Okay, because I thought I heard in the news that there were two guys.
Yeah, it was two guys and a couple of soldiers that shot him. But
it's just a lot of times by the time the news story gets over here, it turns from two guys shooting to two trucks.
Yeah, well, it was a very chaotic incident, and we still don't fully know because when everyone stops shooting, what you have is a truck full of holes, and if you don't have high definition video from a couple of angles, you don't even actually know who actually shot the guy effectively.
Right.
You can say, okay, these two guys took shots, but you don't know who hit him because everyone sees especially when it's a truck, so two people can be shooting at the same truck from two different sides and not even realize another person was shooting from the other side.
Uh-huh.
Which is kind of fucking terrifying when you think about it. But I guess a truck is as a good backstop as you can treat. Like, doing from the front or back, nothing's gonna come out the other side of the truck.
Well,
I mean, it's not a truck like a pickup truck. It's a truck.
right.
Yeah. One guy, they're both of them were tour guides. One of them is a retired lieutenant colonel in the IDF, so that kind of stretches the definition of civilian, I guess. But I mean, he's long retired. He's like 58.
I got a kind of a cultural question for you. Sometimes in the United States, it's not uncommon that if someone has a fatal car accident, that sometimes the family or loved ones or friends put up a roadside memorial to where the person died, at the location where the person died, just off the side of the road.
Yeah.
And there might be, some flowers, maybe a cross, something like that. It may even have like a little message there with the person's name. Is that something that's or something like that that's done in Israel?
Yeah.
And my follow-on to that is since unfortunately you guys seem to have far too many. Of course, one is too many of these terrorist bombings. Do they tend to do the memorials at those locations as well? After it's released by the police.
Yes, but it's different. They don't. Okay, first of all, in this specific incident, all the people that were killed were soldiers. So I don't think the family can put up a memorial privately.
Why not? I mean, unless it was on government property.
Oh, shit.
Hello?
Oh, I got. Wait, shit.
You get a personal issue you need to take care of?
I don't have earphones. Wait. All right. Hang on.
I'm hanging.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No. Yeah. No, my earphones were acting up.
Okay.
I was saying it's kind of complicated with when it's soldiers. I mean, sometimes there are a couple places where there's a memorial where the actual thing happened, but they're usually more like official. Especially when there are soldiers involved, because again there are laws and regulations regarding who can put up a plaque or a memorial for soldiers. It's not the same like civilians.
So, but the families are civilians.
Yeah, the families are civilians, but you can't. There's like a whole story with there's a place where okay, the IDF has specific orders, and those are actually backed up by law about how you can memorize soldiers, what kind of memorials you can put, and all sorts of things. So it kind of affects. But there are places where there were terrorist attacks and there are private memorials, yeah, and municipal. Like if it's in a city, a lot of times the city will do it. The city I lived at before we moved here in Haifa, there are a couple, at least two memorials for suicide bombing victims. It depends.
Okay.
Um, it's also, I mean, if you put like in Jerusalem, if you put one everywhere someone was killed, you know.
I have a slightly different question for you. Is to the best of your knowledge, do Israeli citizens have any constitutional rights? By constitutional, I mean it's in your constitution as to certain rights of which no laws can be written to.
No, we don't have a constitution.
Oh, you don't have a constitution.
No, thank God.
Well, what's the founding document to guide the civilian laws? Not religious laws, but civilian laws.
We have laws that have the same, that have a similar status to constitutional laws in the U.S., to the Constitution. They're called uh, they're considered constitutional laws, and if to change those laws you need a special majority in parliament. You can't change them like a regular law. You know, if three people showed up to parliament that day and two voted against it, to you know to to nullify a law or change it, then that's enough. That's one person more than, you know.
Okay, so a
But
simple majority for normal stuff.
yeah, but some things require a majority, either um, at least 51% of the entire house, or I think some things need more than that. Like they need 80 out of 120 or something like that.
Right, a super majority
Yeah.
is what it's called here.
Yeah. But we don't have a constitution, thank God, because if the people that established Israel wrote a constitution, I am afraid to think what would be written in it, because they were all socialists. So, and they never got around to it because they had so many arguments about what should be in it, you know, that they just they never got around to it.
Right.
They referenced, like, you know, in the future when we write our constitution, it's going to be in the constitution, but they never actually
Did it? Because
the the founding legal document, which is sort of strange because it's not really a legal document, is our Declaration of Independence, which says a bunch of things, but none of them are very specific, you know.
now was that dated the date that the British pulled out, or when was that?
It's not. I think it's the day after they pulled out.
Right, the day after is what I meant.
So that says a bunch of things, but you know, it's not. I mean, they're kind of vague. Um, in terms of, let me see if I can find it. Oh, there we are. It has a historic prelude that explains everything, and then it sets the principles for the state, but not really anything, you know. You know, when you write, will be based on the principles of liberty, justice, and peace. You know, a lot of people around the world have different
Definitions.
definitions of what is liberty, what is justice, and even what is peace. So, um, equal rights. Okay, what kind of rights? You know,
What's a
positive
right?
rights, negative rights,
Right.
liberties or rights. You know, because it's not exactly the same. That's actually not the same. Freedom of religion. Okay, it says freedom of religion, but it also says it will be a Jewish state. So how is that freedom of religion? It's really, you have to remember. I mean, it's the same. It was, by the way, it was the same with the American founding, you know, documents. There were a lot of arguments what should be in them, and it's a lot of compromises to get
Oh
everyone
yes.
to get everyone to sign. And actually, you know, people had to have their arms, twisted to sign it, and not everyone thought that we should declare independence, and you know. So, but I'm very happy they didn't write a constitution, because if they wrote a constitution, it would probably be a socialist catastrophe of a constitution. and we have a lot more. Our governments have a lot more room to wiggle, uh, which is good and bad. But when it comes to something like guns, for instance, the courts in Israel have stated several times, I think, that uh, owning firearms is not a right. It's not. It's not a right under
Hmm.
any Israeli founding documents, or because once it's not written there about guns specifically, there are only two other ways to attack the subject legally. One is property rights. Basically, I can own guns because I can own anything else. It's my private property. And that fails. The other is the right to self-defense. Well, there is no constitutional right to self-defense in Israel. There is a self-defense clause that clears you of criminal responsibility, but there isn't a right to self-defense.
Do they believe in the concept of natural rights?
I don't
Because
know.
that's where, as an example, the right to self-defense really comes from, like in the animal world, is analogous to what I'm speaking of. Is that an animal will just not let another one eat it? It's even if it's a rabbit, it's going to try to kick it. It's going to try to do something to keep it from.
But the self-defense clause in Israeli law is not based on that. And even if you dig through your laws and you go all the way back to the founding fathers, you'll see that their opinion about self-defense was based on common law, and common law, uh, you know, basically says, and I'm gonna, like I'm gonna squeeze it. I'm gonna compress it because we're not gonna have the whole thing, and I'm not a lawyer, but or a legal historian. But common law is like, yeah, natural law says, kill whoever's trying to kill you, but we're human beings, we're above nature, so if you can avoid the risk without killing him, sometimes maybe you shouldn't kill him. If you can run, maybe you should run. Common law is not. Let's say that the state of affairs in the U.S. today is much better than what was sometimes the case in the 18th century in terms of self-defense. Sometimes, not everywhere. It depended on the jury. Let's not forget that common law had juries, and the U.S. has juries. Israel doesn't have juries. That's another problem. You don't get to be you're not on trial in front of a jury. You're on trial in front of a judge,
Right.
and the judge doesn't really have a choice, or theoretically doesn't really have a choice, but to uh, judge you according to the letter of the law. Although they seem to sometimes, at least the Supreme Court, go like, you know what, this law is really unjust, so we're gonna kick it out.
Right, and that happens in the United States too
Yeah,
often. We have,
yeah,
I forget what the term is, but judges that instead of judging a case based off the law, judge it off of a personal agenda that they have.
well, it can be a personal agenda, but it can also be like, well, in your case, it could be, well, this law isn't constitutional, or in Israel, it can be, this law is, I don't know. Well, actually, they use the term unconstitutional, even though we don't have a constitution, but they yeah, you can say that it's a problem. On the other hand, just because something is a law doesn't mean that it's moral, or you know there's a game being played. The problem is that the legal elites around the world are generally um, uh, have turned very left. So you know part of the reason that we don't like that game is because we're kind of losing it in the last couple of years. Couple of years, I mean, like 50 years.
Right.
Because if we were winning, if judges were throwing anti-gun laws out the window and blah blah blah, we would all be cheering for active, you know,
Yeah, proactive judges.
proactive judges, but they're not. um, I don't know. It's kind of complicated.
Yeah, and the
And
United States is probably a good example of how even a foundational document like a constitution over time can be perverted.
oh, definitely. And the founding fathers knew that, though. You know, they were terrified of it. Uh, they saw themselves as like a reincarnation of the Roman Republic, and they knew what happened to the Roman Republic.
Yeah, there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but somebody who said, "It's yours if you can keep it."
Yeah,
Which I guess is, from one generation to another, from the founding of any country moving forward, is true. I mean,
oh, yeah.
they can create the most free place in the world, but
But
it only
if
goes from generation to generation.
if you want good news from around the world, not from Israel, the government of the Czech Republic now wants to amend their constitution to make owning guns part of it.
That is good news.
That is, I think, the only government probably in the history of the world, except for the American one, to
Yeah,
go the other way. You know.
that's not like screaming Chicken Little every time they see something in the shape of a firearm. Oh, there's a Pop-Tart and some little kid chewed it in the form of a gun.
No, I mean, you have governments like the Brazilian government lately, and even the Israeli government to an extent, that are going, that are going more pro-gun. But a government that actually wants to put it into their constitution, I think, other than the U.S., I don't know of another country that.
Right. I gotta go
And I
take
mean,
care of something. I'll be right back.
yeah, sure. In that case, I'm gonna go back inside, warm up.
Yep, I'm back and now he's gone. Oh well. I'll just mute myself till somebody else shows up. Thank you, Mr. Connery. Now I know what happened to him. He got cold.
And there's a Sean, and there's a Dano.
Ah, there is somebody here.
There might be.
Well, I won't be in here for too much longer.
Yeah, I know. You got to do the Daily Gun Show.
Got to do my duties.
Though, you know what that show is missing?
What's that?
It's missing that Night Strike flair when Bob's not around.
Well, it definitely is different without having Bob there.
Yeah, we're Canadianless. I think that's a word. You know what the hell? I'll just make something up.
Although it does take away the fun out of poking at the Canadians when there's no Canadian there to poke.
You see, that just proves you're not doing it right in the first place.
Maybe.
You want to make fun of the Canadians? Instead of their 5-round AR magazines, just wave around to 30. There you go.
So what, did you happen to know what day SHOT Show actually starts next week?
No, but I can look it up.
Oh. No, you don't have to look it up. I was just curious if you knew.
Yeah, I'm not going. I was hoping I'd be able to this year, but no. Nada.
I guess I never even thought of it as a possibility. I don't know why. But
it's not possible for me.
But as a result of not thinking it was a possibility, then I spent my earlier monies in different ways that I could have used towards going to SHOT Show.
Yeah. Well, you could still take a bus.
Oh, I could.
You take a Greyhound bus.
Take maybe what's already maybe a 22-hour drive into a 4-day drive.
Hey?
As we get there via Canada.
Right.
Start in the United States, go to Canada, come down to Vegas.
Well, it's on Thursday the 17th. Or no, Tuesday the 17th. So it's next Tuesday. So if you leave now, you can get there.
That's right. Greyhound are us.
People still take buses, the Greyhound buses, because it's still more affordable to take a Greyhound bus than it is to take a plane. Just saying.
Oh, it is.
Granted, yes, it's longer than taking a plane, but the issue is you get where you need to go.
And, a bus is significantly more comfortable than a car.
Yeah. And some buses these days now have a bathroom on board anyways.
Well, the ones that go, of any distance all do.
Yeah. So, they didn't used to.
Well, yeah, back in the 50s and 60s.
Even well into the 70s and 80s. Because I remember taking a bus one time because the plane broke down and we couldn't get another flight to where we were going, so we had to take a bus. This was like the late 80s. And the bus didn't have a bathroom on it, so we had to wait until we got to where we were going.
Well, how long of a ride was it to the next station or drop off?
Well, it was about 2 or 3 hours.
Oh. Well, that's a long way to go, because usually if it's like an hour or less, you can get away without having a bathroom on the bus.
Yeah, so...
but, since buses have these things called children, even a child is not 15 minutes after you pull away from the curb is going to have to say, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And for the other patients or the other passengers, you definitely want to let that kid go take care of his business. The last thing you want to hear as another passenger is a kid whine for an hour or 2 or 3 about how there's no bathroom.
Yeah. I was old enough to know that, I couldn't get off, so I would just take a nap, and that probably fixed the problem.
I always made sure that whenever I got off, whether I felt I had to or not, I always went to the men's room because you don't know when the next one's coming.
Yep.
And so I always would start off with an empty tank.
I gotta wait until Wednesday. Wednesday, I get fiber optic internet.
Oh, who's your provider?
Local telephone company has finished rolling out fiber optic internet all over town.
Now, is that fiber to your house or fiber just to your neighborhood?
Fiber to my house.
Okay, we have fiber in the small town that I live in, but it's not to the individual homes.
Oh no, it's all of the individual homes. So we had to get the phone line too. So we had to get with like the base phone line, and we told them to make sure it's unlisted.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully I get better internet. And I can ditch Comcast.
Yeah, it's and the reason I mentioned that to your actual home is because a lot of places they were advertising how they had fiber going everywhere, and then all of a sudden there was very little difference as far as the end user because the choking point was from their house to the pole.
Yeah, no. They ran a fiber optic cable straight to my house. So they did that yesterday. I have to wait until Wednesday of next week for them to come and install the modem and everything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was curious as far as what kind of modem connects to a fiber optic network.
A fiber optic modem.
Well, I mean, because like if you go to like Best Buy, I don't see like routers that say fiber compatible or something like that. I just see the old-fashioned ones that are basically cable.
Well, you got to realize fiber optic. Well, a fiber optic modem will give you an insane amount of speed, but you're still going to be limited to just connecting it to either a computer via network cable or router. You're not going to be connecting multiple computers to a cable modem, a cable or fiber optic modem, unless it's set up for that. And I wouldn't want to use a router on any modem in particular, because the thing is, you're making a device that normally just does one thing do 2 or 3 things. And while it will do it, they use the same hardware that they use in just the modems that do one thing. And that's not so good. Because a modem is only supposed to do one thing: provide you with internet. Okay,
well, that's an oversimplification if I ever heard one.
Well, I'm trying to make it easier, simple for people to understand. If you overtax the hardware and make it do more than just give you internet without upgrading the hardware to support that kind of thing, then you basically choke your internal network bandwidth as well as your internet bandwidth.
Yeah, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and there will always be a weakest link.
That's why
even if you have high speed to the back of your machine, but you have a 5-year-old machine, that's the weakest link.
Yeah. Well, no, the machine's fine. But that's why I'm saying, if you get internet from whatever provider, ask them for just the actual modem itself without a router built in, because you'd rather buy one from the store, whether it be Best Buy or otherwise, because the router specifically does one thing. It runs your internal network. Whether you have a couple computers or just two. The issue is you want something that does one thing and one thing well instead of one thing that does three things half-assed. And yes, I was oversimplifying it, but honestly, I don't have much faith in modems that go and do Wi-Fi and routing as well as give you internet, because you're asking too much from a single device.
Well, I disagree with your assumption, but that's fine. We can disagree.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you install networks for people and fix computers?
I used to.
Well, I do, so.
Okay.
And with the hardware they're putting in modems these days, no. Whether it be DSL or cable. Fiber optic, probably the fiber optic's just going to be a regular modem, because they don't do that kind of thing with fiber optic modems. So. So
are you iced in today?
Not iced in. It's like 68 outside.
Oh. For some reason, I thought there was a storm that went through your area.
It got cold, but the coldest it got was one night it was 17 degrees, and then during the day it was like 30 degrees. That's as cold as it got. So it went below freezing, but it didn't stay that way. Which is nice, because I could live without another ice storm.
Yeah, I think we all could live without another storm. Ice, snow, or otherwise.
Yeah, a couple years ago they had that really bad ice storm here. What do they call it? PAX? And
Did you see that?
It took down my power for almost half a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I was literally living out of a hotel for like half a month because I didn't have a generator at the time, and we didn't have any power. So now I have a generator, so I could go and hook it up.
There was a video put out a couple days ago from a channel called Twang and Bang. Normally does just firearm stuff. But I think he's from North Carolina. But he did a video on his area, and he was kind of making a spoof as well, but why people in the South can't drive. But then it also did a good amount of science as well, as far as the unique weather and temperature inversions that happen in regards to the pavement, how it melts on the pavement, then eventually builds up the snow, which insulates it, and then when a car goes over it, packs it down, and then over time, because it's packed down, now it's allowed to freeze, and now it's a sheet of ice.
Yeah, we don't get snow long here. If it snows, it doesn't last the day here in South Carolina.
Oh, right. It may only last hours, but it's long enough to turn into a sheet of ice for hours.
It's if it stays cold enough. Normally we don't get ice. That ice storm was really bad, but that was like a freak ice storm, because we've never had it like that here.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the 7 or so, no, more than 7. At least the however many years I've lived here.
Yeah.
Which is more than 10, I guess, from now.
Well, I have no idea whether he's on the eastern or western side of North Carolina. I'm
Yeah,
assuming they're very different.
but see, there's there's my point. North Carolina, not
Right.
south. I mean, our weather is we're far enough south. Our weather is pretty much almost exactly like Florida's. So
So do you work typically just your schedule normally change from week to week?
it's what I work whenever I get a phone call to go and work.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So whenever I get a customer calling me to go and do something, I go and do it. And
Okay.
sometimes that happens all the time, and sometimes it's few and far between. So
Right.
it's a good thing I do it out of my house. Otherwise, I'd be broke. Well,
Yeah,
more so than I usually am.
having a storefront, so to speak, is a very expensive proposition. And as we can hear and see, Night Strike's fiber optic is really working out well.
There.
How's that fiber optic working for you?
It's not yet. I don't know. It's something just like you started talking and then just nothing. So you still there?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. You mentioned having a storefront. Finish that, would you?
Well, I just said a storefront is just not is a very expensive proposition for a small business. I mean, even if it's just and by a storefront, I mean just a office front. Two desks and a couple of plugs in a bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, if I had enough to build an actual building on my back property, then yeah, I could set up an office for whatever the hell I wanted to do, and I could run it out of that, and I'd have no problems. But you know, I don't have $20,000 lying around.
Right.
Normal people don't have that kind of cash.
Well, I don't know what you mean by normal people don't have that kind of cash. A lot of people have that kind of cash. It may be either tied up in a house, it may be tied up in depreciating assets like cars, boats. It may be in a 401.
Yeah, but if it's tied up in the house, there's no way of actually using it.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, I'm not getting this. I'm not going to have the house refinanced on that. No
Yeah.
way.
Well, see, but you just answered the question yourself. Of course, there's a way to access it. It's just you're not willing to do that, and that's understandable. I'm just saying you can't say no, it's not possible, and then say, well, it is, but I'm not willing to do it. No, it is possible. It just you're going to take your asset and turn it and strip it out of any of whatever sort of equity you may have down to minimalistic.
Yeah, not doing that.
For a lot of people who bought what I'm going to say is too big of a house for their budget, just because the bank allowed it, don't even have equity. They're underwater. They bought a $70,000 house for $100,000, and now it's worth $70,000 again. Yet they still had that $95,000 loan on a $70,000 house.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to jump out here. I got a couple things I got to take care of before my co-host show up.
Yeah. Hopefully Bob shows up.
believe it or not, there actually is some prep work in the Daily Show. I don't know if
No, there isn't. Don't lie. Don't lie. No, there isn't.
but yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Bob shows up today or not. Time will tell. But
Well, you know, a night strike is always available to jump in.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. You have a good afternoon.
I'll fill in for Bob if Bob needs me to.
I'll pass along the message. Catch you later.
Later. Hey, I love the Daily Show. All right, I'm heading out. I'll see you later.